viewers, it's Burning Kersey here once again, and as kind of a part two to one of my previous videos regarding learning particle effects, now we're going to be going over the GPU Sprite Emitter. So, to go ahead and kick things off, I know you can see a little bit of it kind of swirling around here. This is the final product of the of what I've created, but I'm going to kind of go through some of the bits and pieces of it and explain kind of how I got to from beginning to the stage that's currently at right now. So, starting off, one of the main things that I changed was that I changed this from a CPU sprite emitter to a GPU sprite emitter. The reason for this is that due to the fact that have changed it to a GPU sprite emitter, I am able to use a much greater amount of particles, and obviously since our GPU has much more rendering and processing power than our CPU, then we're able to kind of push the boundaries of what it is that we're capable of doing. So So for this, I did make some changes, or to get to this point. I gave it about a lifetime of like 5 to 7 seconds. That way I can get like this cool kind of green wispy effect. Kind of give it some time to auto-generate from the center point right here, and then kind of swirl all out and about, possibly break into pieces. Kind of depends on the rotation. Um, So initial size, I use the same general scaling as I did with the previous particle effect, as I felt that that was a nice, good size to where it's nice and easy to see in game and things such as that. Yeah, initial velocity, very much so similar as well. Um, so I kind of kept it with the initial velocity so that way it can just be kind of guided by my local vector field here, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But let's kind of continue down the list. So for color over life, I did make a change. I don't really need a curve for color change, and I'm going for a kind of a static, constant color. So I chose a nice little green, kind of like a light-ish green, maybe a little bit of a plasma-like in my opinion. I wanted to create something close to kind of like a ghost wispy effect with this particle effect in particular. Um, so one other change that I did do is that from what I've learned with collision, is that there are actually two different types of collision modules. There's one for CPU emitters and then one for GPU emitters. So I kind of changed it from the CPU to GPU version. Not too much of a radical change. I kind of gave it a nice zero point 0.3 constant, just that way it's, when it gets, when it collides with the ground and other actors and other objects, it doesn't, go crazy. It gives it enough of a nice bounce to where it's a little bit of realism, but not, going overboard. So next part comes in here is my local vector field. So from what I've learned from this and what going through the tutorial and everything, it seems that the local vector field is really just a field of vector points within a confined space that kind of act like as little channels in which the particles themselves will actually flow and move through. Um, which I think is actually kind of neat, and I'd actually be a little interested in making my own vector field just to maybe, in a sense, perform drawing effects with my particles. But that's something for another day. Um, so to get the little bit of the wispiness, or the random wispiness, I should say, is I would go ahead and set up a local vector field rotation. Kind of gave it like a simple XYZ rotation. That way it kind of goes all about, not just a very linear-ish type rotation, things such as that. So with that, it was pretty straightforward. I wanted to make sure that I gave it a little bit of a curve, that way it can kind of like wave all around. Due to the fact that I do have a initial velocity, as previously mentioned from the previous particle effect, that I wanted to kind of keep as a driving force, so that way I can try and drive the particle through the vector field itself to create all sorts of fun little wavy effects. Some of this does result in some of the particles breaking off, but I think that's actually a nice, neat little touch. Gonna kind of go in here to kind of the game view here. So this is what it kind of looks like here in what an in-game version would look like. Some things that I might actually think about cleaning up, maybe or maybe not, is kind of like the scatteriness of some of these. Don't know how well you can see it, but as it sometimes waves around starting from the initial, it kind of breaks off into like starting off as like little small individual line segments that are kind of like gradually being moved around. I kind of want it to kind of stay looking like a continuous stream from within a certain distance from spawn point. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way that this turned out. Put in a little bit of collision that way, it goes in the ground, bounces off, and skitters away for a little bit. But I think it's a nice, neat little effect. So, with that, I believe that will be the end of this video. Thanks for watching.